Hey guys, welcome to SoCal Training Team. So I saw this ad. Actually, a friend of mine sent me this ad, and just kind of wanted to go through this ad. Thought it was pretty interesting. Just wanted to give you a disclaimer that everyone will interpret this in different ways, and I'm pretty sure that Um, there are parts of this, because it is a news story, I'm pretty sure parts of this could be accurate. Some of it could be inaccurate, and it could be reason behind it before I get into this. So um, I have I have no true direction that I'm trying to steer you in when we go through this ad. So I just wanted to present the information, and then you guys do with it, or form your own opinions, basically. So it's dealing with disabled Californians. So this is for my California people. Nearly 1 billion in funds left unspent by centers for disabled Californians. So nearly 1 billion allocated for regional centers that purchase supportive services for Californians with developmental disabilities went unspent in the recent year and was ultimately returned to the state, even as some disabled people and their families said they needed more help. California provides assistance to people with autism and other developmental disabilities through a system of nonprofits called regional centers, which are contracted with the California Department of Developmental Services. 21 of them exist across the state, each serving a distinct area. More than 400,000 California children and adults are served through regional centers annually. The system has been criticized for persistent gaps in spending on services for Californians and of different races and in different regions. And just to kind of stop right there, I'll do a different video just to kind of show you what they're talking about when it talks about that the spending for Californians on different races in different regions is important, because I think it's an important part to cover too. But I won't do it in this video. Families have complained it can be difficult to navigate the system. Even after even after Californians get the green light from regional centers for services, that assistance may not ultimately be provided if staffing agencies or other service providers cannot find workers to do the job. In recent years, regional centers have spent roughly two-thirds of the amount they have authorized for supportive services, according to an analysis of state data provided by the Association of Regional Center Agencies. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. Just a little. Where's my zoom? Here's my zoom. Just make it a little bigger. If the money meant for purchasing supportive services goes unspent at the regional centers, the funds that were allocated are eventually reverted to the state. That sum increased more than ninefold in 3 years, soaring to more than 978 million in the budget year that ended in summer 2022, from 108 million in 2018 2019. In total, nearly 8.9 billion was allocated to the regional centers to purchase services in 21-22. So for every $10 allocated to the regional center for services, more than one was ultimately reverted in 21-22, according to Times analysis of the figures provided by the state. The 11% reversion rate was more than three times the percentage that had been reverted in the previous year. And then they have a chart here, money unspent by the regional center, where it says hundreds of millions of dollars allocated for regional centers that coordinate services for Californians where developmental disabilities have gone unspent. Now I'm pretty sure. Well, I won't put my opinion in here yet. That same year, 30% of families of children receiving regional center services who responded to a survey said they were only sometimes or seldom satisfied with the support and services they received. It's astonishing to see how much money is being sent back to the state when there are so many people with developmental disabilities who are not getting services at all, said Judy Mark, president of the advocacy group Disability Voices United. Regional center leaders pointed to several issues, including companies that provide needed services struggling to find and retain staff. Larry Landor, executive director of the Regional Center of Orange County, said that as wages have risen elsewhere, state rates for workers who assist people with disabilities haven't kept up. I can see that. It was not us holding back the money, Landor said, and I'm probably pronouncing the name wrong, but hopefully I'm not. It was the agencies not being able to get the staff. Amy Westling, executive director of the Association of Regional Center Agencies, said that California had a record low unemployment, which always makes competition for staff challenging. In addition, she said that when the state budgeted for regional centers for 21-22, it was anticipated the possible effects of COVID surge that could necessitate more spending on one-on-one services. Earlier in the pandemic, when schools were provided virtual instruction and group services were suspended, Westling said the regional centers were paying for a lot of personal assistance and other daily care. Money was included in the budget in case that was needed again in 21-22, but in hindsight, that isn't what happened, she said. Spending on services did go up that year to $7.9 billion from roughly $7.6 billion among all the regional centers, but did not increase as much as budgeted. Such explanations failed to satisfy Fernando Gomez, co-founder of Integrated Community Collaborative, which helps families of people with developmental disabilities navigate the system. Gomez said even the lower amounts returned in earlier years were galling. Could you imagine what that money could do? The amount of individuals whose lives would change, he asked. Advocates said there is no shortage of unmet need. A report released 2 years ago by Public Counsel, a public interest law firm, found that the regional centers, more than 40% of children and teens were not getting any services purchased through the agencies. Last year, an independent state commission issued a report calling it a system in distress. Among its findings, the vast differences in how different centers assess people for services and decide what is offered means the level of care can vary significantly from different individuals, even if they have similar needs. Mark at Disability Voices United said, the bottom line is that people with developmental disabilities aren't getting the services they are entitled to. We are tired of excuses. So these are amount allocated for money unspent for 21-22, and I'll just quickly go through them. South Central, the amount reverted was $122 million. Kern, $50 million. Redwood Coast, $22 million. North Bay, $46 million. Orange, $65 million. San Andreas, $68 million. San Diego, $68 million. Golden Gate, $52 million. Far Northern, $25 million. Eastern LA, $36 million. San Gabriel Pomona, $38 million. West Side, $38 million. Alta California, $65 million. Tri-Counties, $38 million. Harbor, $26 million. Valley Mountain, $27 million. Central Valley, $37 million. Lanterman, $22 million. East Bay, $43 million. North LA, $46 million. Inland, $46 million. At the South Los Angeles Regional Center, which serves areas including South LA and Compton, the unused money of $122 million amounted to more than 1/5 of what the center had been allocated by the state for purchasing services in 21-22. That was the highest percentage among regional centers statewide. Leaders of South Central Los Angeles Regional Center said they had ramped up spending earlier in the pandemic as families scrambled to handle remote learning. A public counsel report credited the South LA Center with more than doubling its spending on services for children and teens in 2021. an increase that accounted for most of the statewide narrowing that the year of spending gaps for Latino children it found. When the budget allocations were planned for 21-22, the state was prepping to expect the worst, again projecting off previous spending, said Cheryl Mallinson, Director of Community Services. Instead of schools, Instead, as schools reopened, families no longer needed the same kind of assistance, center officials said. Jesse Roca, its director of adult services, also emphasized that an unusually high percentage of its clients, more than 2/3, are school-age youth compared with the population of other regional centers. The same needs were no longer there. It's all based on the unique individual needs that even family or individuals present, says Cesar Garcia, its director of clinical services. For example, officials pointed out that SLARC spending on one category of services, respite care, fell from 109 million to 59 million. A widely used survey showed that same year, 33% of families and children with disabilities who were surveyed at the South LA Center said they needed additional services. South LA Regional Center officials disputed that those findings were an accurate reflection of its performance, saying only a fraction of its clients had responded to the survey, and that as its population had rapidly grown, some clients might be so new that services had not been initiated. At the regional center serving Orange County, the amount of unspent money ballooned in 2 years to nearly 65 million from 3 million. That was roughly 12% of what it was allocated in 21-22, slightly higher than the average rate at which funds were left unspent by the regional centers. Lauder said that even now, we're struggling with our day programs to get enough people hired. Such programs provide adults with disabilities a range of daily activities for skill building and community integration. Pay increases have been slowly phased in by the state over time, which another boost is expected in January. Landor said that he hoped that finally the field will be a bit leveled with competing employers. California has ramped up funding for its regional centers over time, increasing their budget allocation for purchasing services from roughly $6 billion to over $11 billion from 2018 to 2024. Spending has been driven by a growing caseload and more use of supportive services, according to the Legislative Analyst's Office. This summer, the agencies ended the budget year with more than $1.4 billion unspent. That number is not final. State officials said claims for supportive services provided during that year can still be submitted before unspent money is eventually reverted to state coffers, up to 2 years after the end of the budget. Interesting. Carla Castaneda, Chief Deputy Director of Operations at the Department of Developmental Services, said the state tries to do frequent monitoring of spending, but there can be lags in getting that information, and unfortunately, during the pandemic, there were even longer lags. In addition, Castaneda said there can be restrictions on their ability to reroute funds, especially for newer services. With time, Castaneda said, we do think it will trend back to much smaller share of the unspent funds. For instance, she said recent increases in service coordinators at regional centers could better connect people with the needed supports, and California has also reported other services such as summer camp. Westling said there is no incentive to leave money for supportive services unspent, since the regional centers cannot transfer the unused funds to their day-to-day operations. Nor will regional centers be penalized if they overspent their budgets, she said, as long as the spending was consistent with the rules. Disabled people are legally entitled to such services in California, so if the system is running short on resources, then the obligation shifts to the administration to seek additional resources from the legislator. Westling said it really is designed to ensure that we have the resources necessary to meet people's needs. But to attorney Valerie Vanneman, who represents people with disabilities and their families, leaving hundreds of millions of dollars unspent is a symptom of a system that is falling apart. Vanneman said the pandemic led to the regional centers losing experienced professionals and that working remotely had harmed the kind of collaboration needed to make sure people got the services that they need. What you're seeking is that where services should have been put together, where the money would have been spent, there was no internal structure to make it happen, Vanneman said. Arva Martin, chief executive of the nonprofit Special Needs Network, Inc., says she understood the unusual circumstances facing the regional centers amid COVID. Even taking into account those things, she said, I think it speaks to a level of bureaucracy that makes the regional centers very difficult to navigate. And it is disheartening to meet families who don't have adequate services, who don't have adequate resources, and then hear about $1 billion being returned, Martin said. So this was an article. It was written by Emily Alpert Reyes. Emily Alpert, she covers public health for Los Angeles Times. So do want to give her credit for writing this. And like I said, she's with Los Angeles Times. Very interesting article. I think there's a lot of underlying information because you got to realize that this story was written from someone's perspective, and so I'm pretty sure there are answers and responses to that of why these. It's just not as straightforward as that catchy headline is what I'm getting at. That nearly $1 billion in funds left unspent by the Regional Centers for Disabled California. Very catchy subtitle. It does have some merit behind it as well, but also I think it's fair to give the regional centers an opportunity to be able to explain why that money went unspent. I know one reason would be, and it's just me just using common sense here. One reason would be if you look at that time period, that 21, 22, what was going on during that time period, COVID, right? A lot was shut down. A lot of everyone was working from home. A lot of people quit. So you have a lot of nuances in there that impacted that. And I know that they're saying that it's increased over the years, and I'm pretty sure COVID didn't help it. But we do have to take that into account because a lot did slow down and or shut down during that time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over over the next few years because it is some catching up to do. But I want to see what happens for 23, 24 and see if that number starts to come down, because I know for a fact there are new services that are put into place that may offset that. Coordinated family support, self-determination program, and some other programs that will be able to utilize some of those fundings and provide services to individual with disabilities. So I think the regional centers, they're working on it. It's not by far not perfect. I don't know what business is perfect, and I'm not even trying to make excuses for them. They do have some work to do, and then as far as expenditures, and then also why is there a difference in services for different races and different regions? So that's something I want to address as well, because I think it's important for us to definitely bring that to the forefront and find out more information about it. But just wanted to present you with this information. Thank you for taking the time to go through this video. And this is Leonardo with SoCal Training Team, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.